Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds. Goth-ass musicals.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Sweeney Todd, the Seaman Harbor of Sweeps Week.
Of Skeet Street.
Yeah. Made popular by the movie Jersey Girl.
Seaman Harbor.
This is all wrong.
This is the tale of an ordinary man who had everything.
Barker, his name was. Benjamin Barker.
Until a man of power stole his freedom, destroyed his family, and banished him.
May the Lord have mercy on your soul.
For life. And in his sorrow, a new man was born.
We did this wrong, Dave. We did this wrong. But it's too late. It's too late to start over.
It's too late. You remember that? How they performed Sweeney Todd and Jersey Girl?
No, I've never seen Jersey Girl.
Oh, that's probably fine. It's okay.
Why on earth would I have seen
Because it's a
Jersey?
Kevin Smith movie with J-Lo and Ben Affleck. Will Smith's in it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Listen, this isn't about that. This is about another movie by Tim Burton, and I want to thank Harris and Millie.
Thank you.
And Millie, thank you so much for being the producer of this podcast to watch this Tim Burton movie that is a little problematic these days.
Timothy Birthson.
Timothy Birthson, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little problematic.
There's some, let's say, unfortunate casting.
Yeah.
They didn't know at the time, or maybe Tim Burton.
Wait,
who knows?
Is there some or just the one?
Is it just the one?
I think it's just the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Johnny Depp throwing a lady into fire doesn't go down smooth.
Blazing hot take. It doesn't hurt the movie that much because Sweeney Todd is the bad guy.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Well, it's one of those things where it's like, going back and watching movies like Seven. It's a whole conversation to be had, right?
Yeah. It's definitely, I think it's a case by case thing, honestly. I think so. I don't want to stake a permanent claim into that, but right now, I'm thinking it's a case by case thing.
Yeah, with a movie like this, so this is my personal view on it.
Just real quick, you just to touch on your example of Seven. Seven, I think, because he's John Doe. Kevin Spacey plays John Doe. American Beauty, however, never watching that again.
No, never. Because there's different levels, right?
Right.
I
There's
don't
a lot
know
of
how
things
much
wrong
money
with American Beauty.
Yeah, I don't know how much money is getting to these people by watching old movies. I certainly won't watch like a new movie with them, because
Probably
to me
not.
that's a bigger statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the emotional impact, which is what we're talking about, which is like, honestly, I probably would have never watched this movie again if it weren't.
No, and I probably won't after this, even though I did really like this movie, and revisiting it for this episode, I do still like it. But
right.
I'm probably not going to watch it again. Yeah.
Yeah. My personal view beyond like whether or not it's actually financially supporting the people is that it's just hard. It's hard.
Right. It's difficult because for a movie like this and Seven, I own the Blu-rays already. So it's not like It's not like I'm slipping dimes into Kevin Spacey's pocket when I throw my disc in the player.
For sure.
But
yeah, and I just mean emotionally, it's just like I don't know if I don't really want to see these people's faces sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. The emotional thing is more like
But that's not what this is about. We're gonna just talk about this movie.
We're just getting the depth stuff out of the way up front. So
yeah. This is when was this made? Like 2007.
Yeah.
Tim Burton. It is the most Tim Burton movie.
It is
like it's almost like a parody.
Is sort of Tim Burton's not normally this violent.
That's true.
Like Tim Burton's really loves the gothic look, but like his movies tend to be not as cruel and not like this is the darkest movie I think he's done.
Yeah, so let's talk about how we like this movie. So I didn't care for this movie that much when it came out, and I've sort of figured out why watching it this time. I've only seen it the 2 times. What are your thoughts on this?
I really liked this movie when it came out. I'm into musicals. I'm into Tim Burton. At the time, I was into Johnny Depp. I like the cast. It's Helena Bonham Carter, who is killing it in this. She's so good.
She's so good.
Alan Rickman is good. He's not in it much, but he plays a good bad guy. He's Hans Gruber.
Yeah. He's Alan Rickman.
Timothy Spall is even, he's always good, but he gets to play a real slimy bad guy character in this that he doesn't normally get to play. He doesn't normally get to play heavies. He's usually like kind of the henchman that gets like yelled at and stuff thrown at him. But in this movie as the Beetle, he's like an actual leg breaker. So that was an interesting role to see him in. And Sacha Baron Cohen as the fake Italian barber.
I think there's some really smart casting with him.
Yeah.
So this is the thing about this movie is that I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it does some really smart things. The character structure is very good, and some of that might be the fact that it's based off a musical.
It's based off the Sondheim musical, and
there's a thing with this where I'm like, I don't know who to point fingers at. You know what I mean? Where it's like some things worked, some things didn't for me, and I don't know what's Tim Burton, what's the musical, what's the original story. So I'm not really gonna guess with that. But like the character structure, for the most part, I think is again very smart. There's certain things with like, okay, you need, you have this the young kid like with the connection to the daughter, and that thread
that
sort of links him to the villain. So we find the villain early. We have Sweeney Todd playing like the bitter old version, needing revenge, like all these like kind of tiers. And then with Borat there, I think that was really smart casting because at the time you used to see a clown, right?
Yeah.
And then the scene where he like shows up and his accent changes and he's kind of insidious and you're like, right, he can act. But like people at the time didn't probably know that. So it's just like a very smart way to use him. What were you going to say? You were going to say something.
Oh, I'll fast forward to what I was going to say earlier, but I just to agree with what you were saying about casting Sacha Baron Cohen. It's like it's almost stunt casting, but it's because it plays with what people at the time in 2007, at least most American audiences would associate him with, is like Borat. So the turn, it works a whole lot more.
Yes.
I don't want to say more better, but it just works so much better when people are expecting him to just continue being a clown and then he turns into kind of this intimidating character. Yeah, you're right.
Right, and that really cool. That spy show wasn't out yet, so we didn't know. We just didn't know how much he could act. You know.
Yeah,
and so
American audiences at least. American I don't know how much he had done. And what I was going to say earlier is the young guy, the sailor character that has the connection with Joanna, Sweeney Todd's daughter, is Vecna from Stranger Things.
That's where I know him from.
I forget the actor's name right now, but
he's one of my issues with this movie is because, all right, movie. So just some more compliments here. I love the look, the set design, the costumes. I love it.
Yeah. This got a few some attention during awards season. I remember Best Actor for Johnny Depp, which he didn't win, but
You know what would have been cool?
What's
if
that?
Tim Burton fucking lit it. If I could see it.
It is
because
really dark.
It's gray. It's almost a black and white film.
Yeah.
And that was my first issue is I was like, the camera work is great. It's just the lighting. I was just like, what the fuck? Light the movie. Could you please? Like, because everything looks good except it's gray and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Even when you like up the brightness on your TV, it's still pretty tricky to see. And it is just kind of this flat gray, like every scene almost, with, you know, the exception of the actual baking room, which is lit to look like hell.
Right, yes. There's a few parts where they actually show color, but it's very rare. And I honestly, I know that's intentional, but I just don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think it, I'll agree with that. It's a little much. Like I think it works in Sleepy Hollow. He does a similar thing in Sleepy Hollow, but Sleepy Hollow is not lit the same way.
I was going to say Sleepy Hollow for some reason feels more vibrant. I'd have to watch it again, but this just feels like you just turn down the contrast and darkness, and it's just kind of muted in a way that I don't think looks very good. And I think part of that is from the perspective of a villain, which is kind of another issue I have. And this is again where it's like, this is probably also the play, which is like, I don't really care for the plot or the people in it. And I think that the people, it's trying to tell kind of a moral tale. But the problem is nobody is acting like a human, if that makes sense. Like there's no lesson to be learned here because it's about something so abstract and cartoonish that I'm just sort of like, I don't know, man. Like you look at a movie like Old Boy, which is another movie about revenge, right? Mm-hmm. And that movie kind of says something, right? Where it's being like, look how cool this revenge story is. And then at the end you realize like, oh, it wasn't cool at all. It in fact was very uncool
I think
and humiliating.
I think this movie says the exact same thing.
Yeah, but the problem I have with it is that at no point am I on Sweeney Todd's side. And he's not getting revenge by killing a bunch of strangers.
He's just a maniac at that point.
Right, and he's always a maniac is kind of my issue. And so it doesn't start in a way that makes me go, "Oh yeah, I'm on this guy's side." He is what happened to him was terrible.
Yeah.
But even that's a little cartoonish. Like his memory is that he's in the market and he literally just gets like Alan Rickman points to him and he gets grabbed and then Alan Rickman just kind of swoops in and takes his place. Yeah. And it's like, huh.
I think you have to take that as one being adapted from a stage production, because that's, they have to be very, very efficient. That's probably pretty close to what it looked like. And two, you can also kind of think of it as just the efficiency of his dream and the restructuring of his dream. And maybe, obviously it didn't all happen like that, but it's when you not his dream, I'm sorry, his memory. When you remember things, you cut out a lot of details and you truncate stuff and,
Right.
But yeah,
but it never
just objectively, it is kind of funny that he just points.
It is.
These dudes
I know it's
come
supposed
out of
to be,
nowhere.
Yeah, I know it's supposed to be kind of an abridged dream for sure, but it's
an
like
abstract.
A cartoon.
It's an abstract. Yeah. It's its memory.
But it just sort of what it is to me is it's all black and white. People are either pure or wicked in this, and there's very little in between. It feels like, and there's very little message because of that.
I think you pointed this out earlier. You said something that kind of stuck in my brain when you said that there's sort of like different tiers of characters. Mm-hmm. And I think what this movie kind of does by breaking all these characters up into pretty simple, two-dimensional, with the exception of the two leads. But
right.
They're sort of like breaking up the more nuanced characteristics that you might have in a single character, I guess. So it's like, I feel like by seeing, what was that, whatever his name was, Anthony, the young guy, Anthony and Joanna's story kind of reminds you what the actual stakes are. And like, I guess because of Anthony and Joanna's connection to Sweeney Todd and to Judge Turpin, you still are obviously more sympathetic for Sweeney Todd, even though he is the villain.
Right.
And I think having those two characters there, that constant thread kind of keeps touching you back to, oh, right, remember this tragedy that happened to this guy. And it's like you're through those characters, you're seeing the two different ways he could sort of correct the injustice that was done to him, right? Like he should be helping Anthony break Joanna out of that house and get them out of London.
Right, and he becomes so obsessed with revenge that he throws them under the bus.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. I think that that's not a bad idea. Like I said, like I get what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Johnny Depp, or Sweeney Todd rather, starts at a fucking 11. Again, like he never. There's just some weird stuff they're trying to.
I would say he starts at a 9 because there is an escalation to his behavior.
Right. There's a turn, which is his decision to kill people,
just kill anyone.
Which is very abrupt. And it's just there's parts where I'm like, I'm not sure what the movie wants me to think about him. Like when he goes against Borat and Borat is like mean to the boy and he's like smug. I guess having known the movie, and if you watch the trailer, you would have known. It's like, well, Sweeney Todd kills people, so Borat is still the better person. And the movie feels like it's trying to be like, look out, isn't it great that he's showing up Borat? And I'm like, well, you know, Borat is like mean to that kid, but later Sweeney Todd's going to try to kill the kid. So it's like ultimately, and I know.
So does Mrs. Lovett. So does Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah, and I know what the movie's trying to do is I think we want to be on his side at first, Sweeney Todd.
Yeah,
but he's just such an asshole from the start. Like he's an asshole to Helena Bonham Carter. He's extremely nihilist. His song is about how everything sucks.
He's a real edgelord.
Yeah, he is, and so like it just.
He gets off the boat in London, like, London's just a piss poss full of shit.
Right.
It's like, all right, man, calm down. Save it for fucking live journal. All right.
Right. No, it's true. I also think there needs to be some nuance with Joanna and Vecna there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so, like, first of all, I don't think, it feels like most of the characters, because they are two-dimensional, don't have that much agency. I would argue the judge, they want us to think he's like really sharp, but if he was so sharp,
he's a fool in this movie.
You'd think he'd realize that he's going to the barber shop of the guy who he stole the wife of. Like, you'd think he'd remember that guy.
He doesn't recognize him. Like, and
I know it's supposed to be hubris, but it's like, exactly. It's hubris. He doesn't think he could be in any danger or that anybody could possibly outsmart him. Right. But then it doesn't make him formidable, you know?
Not really. No, he's not. His formidability is just in his position, which doesn't really come into play too much, except what we see in the flashback of when he just throws him in jail and takes his wife. And like the threat of menace against Joanna, where he's like, to keep her safe from these ghouls, I'm going to marry her myself. It's like, oh, cool. That's not creepy.
Yeah, you're not being
raised this child
Alan
from
Rickman
infancy.
Character. Poor Alan Rickman.
Yeah, being a real Snape.
Yeah, but that's a dynamic I was thinking about, because I was like, what if they made Alan Rickman's character like really good to Joanna, even though he absolutely did something terrible,
like Mask and Zorro?
Mm-hmm. The other dynamic is so Vecna. What's the character's name? Anthony. His love story with Joanna, I think an issue I had with it is it's not that pure. And what I mean by that is that
I know.
Joanna just needs to get the fuck out of there. And so this guy shows up out her window and his first song is I Will Steal You.
Mm-hmm.
And she's rolling with it. At no point do I feel like I know if Joanna actually likes this guy, because it's literally just her only hope to escape. And that's all he is throughout. And he is extremely, like, it's this thing where like everybody's sort of coveting this girl, and they don't really make a point of that. And I kind of think they needed to. Like, this is what I mean, where it's like, I feel like it's circling ideas or lessons that don't really play out.
Right. It seems to be more focused with how dark it is rather than, and I don't mean literally dark, what Dave was saying earlier, but how cruel and dark and violent and bloody the whole production is, which I think, I mean, I've never seen the stage show. I imagine that was probably a pretty big selling point for it, because I've seen a bunch of theater and there's not much, like, they don't usually get this violent.
For
musicals
sure.
that I've seen anyway.
And I'm sure that when the blood flies, it's shocking when you see it in But it does seem to kind of be, a little bit like a slasher movie where, like, the characters are very simple. The story is not particularly deep. It's really just kind of there to hold together all the blood and guts. Because the blood and guts in this movie are pretty sweet. And it's all leading to a very cruel thing.
Yes.
Which is, of course, Sweeney Todd killing his own wife in front of his daughter, which is, for a revenge film, it's a great twist. Again, like, I don't mind that idea.
It is not dissimilar from Old Boy.
Right. Except I think Old Boy just did a better job at subverting the genre, whereas this doesn't feel like it has much to say except for cruelty.
Yeah.
Ultimately. So, like, that's all to say that, like, this movie is beautifully made, wonderfully performed, and I, again, a lot of care to the character structure, but ultimately I'm just like, nah. I don't like it. It's not an intellectual reason, it's an emotional one.
For sure. Yeah. It is really, it's not a movie I watched a lot, even when before all the Johnny Depp horse shit came out, I was still just enjoying this movie and his movies, him as an actor. But even then, it wasn't a movie that I watched a whole lot because it is just such a downer. Even though Anthony and Joanna escape, it's just like, Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's like, at what cost? Like, that's the least they can do. I also do have an issue with the story structure. Because it takes an hour and 13 minutes.
It's lopsided, yeah.
Yep. For him to actually start killing people, building the chair rather, to go into business. And everything up until that point feels stagnant to me. Because it's all like, you'll get revenge.
And it's all kind of in the same room, too. We spend 45 minutes, I think, just in the pie shop and his barber shop. It really feels like circling, like 3 or 4 scenes in a row just take place in the same location. I felt that this time for sure, where it's definitely so much setup, and then when he finally starts building his chair, there's only like 30 minutes of movie left.
Right, and it's like, I thought this was the inciting incident. It's because that is my memory of the movie, was like, oh yeah, surely this
they don't land on the story's hook, which is a serial killer barber slashes up his victims and then his baker neighbor below him cooks them into pies. Like, that's the hook of Sweeney Todd. We don't get to that until over an hour into the movie.
Right. And again, that turn is really tough. Because also I blame him. He's there to shave Alan Rickman, and he's like right about to slit his throat, and the kid walks in, and I was just like, do it, man. Just like, he's still there.
I like the song, I like the duet, but and I understand how musicals work. But it is funny that, like, this guy who he's just been lusting for revenge after for so long finally sits down in his barber chair totally alone. He's got a razor to his throat, and then Alan Rickman starts going like bum, 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 bum,
right,
and then they start like and like Johnny
sing.
Depp's like whistling, and then they're like singing this song. It's like, dude, fucking stab him, cut his head off. Like, what are you doing?
What's wrong with you? Yeah, and like that makes him go, I'm going to kill everyone, and I still don't really understand that turn. Honestly,
well, it's quick, and this is kind of a problem with musicals sometimes, because a lot of the exposition is sung and you can easily miss it. But Alan Rickman basically says, I'm never coming back here, because Anthony bursts in. He's like, oh, you keep this guy who was leering at my ward. Only I get to leer at my ward. So he's like, I can see what kind of company you keep. Will keep their custom, because you'll get no more of mine. And he storms out. But then he also says he's keeping Joanna locked up, and is going to, not let anyone see her ever, and keep her under lock and key forever. So Sweeney Todd takes that as, okay, so he's never coming back here, so I'm not going to get my revenge, and he's locking Joanna up, so there's no way I'm ever going to see her again. So at that point, he's like, fuck it, I've lost everything. I might as well murder everyone in London. I agree. Right. It's a jump. But that's the reason they give for it.
Right. Yes, that is the reason. And it just, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough.
It happens so quickly. It's like a couple of lines, and it's just like, fuck it, let's go. It's like, wow, How did we get here?
Yeah, and honestly,
he wasn't a bad guy before he went to jail. At least not that they show us.
See, that's the thing, is if they showed that he was hardened, that he was kind of already leaning that way in some way before that moment, it would have been helpful, I think. Sweeney Todd, the character, this is what I mean by it doesn't work quite as a parable, because he's not relatable.
No, he's a maniac.
Yeah, it's not like, watch, it's a slippery slope. Don't create an elaborate barber's chair and slit people's throats like a lot of people do, because it'll cost you. It's so unrelatable what he's doing, that it's just at the end when he gets his throat slit, and it's just like, yeah, that's what would happen. Yeah. He went on a murder rampage. I don't know what to tell you.
I think some of that might have to do with before this was a stage play. This is an old story. I don't know if it was a true crime story or a supposedly true crime story or anything, but it was this kind of folk tale almost, I guess. Right. Sort of so he was sort of an infamous murderer from English fiction history, so it was setting out to make a musical about Sweeney Todd. It would be kind of setting out to make a musical about Jack the Ripper,
right?
So they have
where you're trying to sympathize with him. That's the weird part,
right? You're trying to retroactively find a beginning for this character where you could possibly get the audience on his side, even for a bit.
Right.
So it's reverse engineering a sympathetic backstory. It's like the Maleficent Disney movie or something.
Yeah.
So I think that might be partly to blame for the shakiness of Sweeney Todd's motivation, because the story began with a character who's just a murderer.
Right.
It's well, how do we get him to the point where he's just murdering people?
A musical about someone growing up in a terrible situation where they're killing animals and being abused, and then they become a serial killer. Yeah. No, you need to give them some dramatic motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this case, it's a weird thing to swing, and again, it's not, there are weirder movies about more terrible or just as terrible main characters. There's just something about the tone of this that it just sort of, I find it jarring and a little pointless in the end, is the thing. Where it's if he is supposed to be reflecting this young kid who's in love with his daughter, they sort of play they're kind of representing him and his wife before it all went bad or something like that. Then it just I don't know. I say something with that, I guess, because he doesn't represent the bitter husk. If the idea is what love can do to a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is love doesn't tend to make people build an elaborate serial killer chair and dump people in a basement. So it's just so abstract, ultimately. That it's not. I don't know. I didn't get much out of it.
Well, yeah, there's also the meat pies and Like the hook of the movie doesn't ultimately have much to do with the movie, because it really, like, they go through him being a crazy murderer, just murdering random people, and her, Mrs. Lovett, cooking them up into pies. They go through that in a single medley. Like, that's like 6 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
like it's really just a story about 6 characters, and the fact that he's murdering other people and she's making them into pies is super, super incidental.
Right. And also her character, as well played as she is, also doesn't make much sense.
She's also bad. She's also a bad person.
She's the most convincing, I would say, of the characters, but that's, I think, because Helena Bonham Carter is playing her so well.
Yeah, she's really good. Yeah.
But like, it starts with her running the shitty pie shop and like complaining, and like, since the pie shop is bad, she doesn't care how she makes the pies. And I'm like, well, what came first there, Helena Bonham Carter? Like, maybe just clean up the bugs in your pie shop. I don't know. She knows her pies are shitty. She doesn't care. And then she's like really latched on to Sweeney Todd from the start. She's like obsessive.
There's a very quick line in the duet that they do, where she says she knows who he is. She knows he's actually Benjamin Barker, and she says, she had a crush on him from afar for a long time before he went away to prison. So that,
I think that's why she like works, because she plays it well as like, it's like she's a member of the Manson family before Manson even showed up. You know?
And you can see every decision she makes is gently manipulating him into choosing to start a life with her.
Yes. And the thing that you have to the hump that you have to get by is she's also a sociopath who doesn't care.
You have to
about human life.
Right. You have to sort of, I guess you don't need to recognize it from the start, but by the end, you should definitely recognize that she is also a villain in this movie, and does every decision she makes is very selfish. So, you
know what was one of the notes I had that I wonder if would have been interesting is if in the third act you just follow the kid and it becomes like a slasher movie. Where it's like,
I think it's a slasher movie from beginning to end.
Oh yeah, but you know what I mean? Where it's like suddenly you realize like, oh, the kid is the protagonist and he's trying to get the fuck away from them. And I know you'd have to lose a lot of the story for that, but you know what I mean? Where it's like, I think just there needed to be something interesting in the third act for me to like change the perspective in a way, because I just watching a slasher movie from the slasher's perspective. It gets repetitive, I guess, after a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It does. I do think that never occurred to me before. This viewing and doing this episode, that this is basically just a musical slasher film.
Yeah, it is more clear that way.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's hard when there's like very little people to root for.
You have like 3 sympathetic characters.
Right, but the main characters, the characters we spend the most time with,
they're all rotten.
They're all rotten, and they live a rotten life, and they're in this pit of like despair.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's all in one room, and it's just like watching Sweeney Todd just like brood in this shitty room, and I'm just like, I don't want to be here for this.
Yep, singing to his knives.
Yeah, give me some protagonists, I guess. Because it's not him, and it never is him. I do want to talk about the music, because the music ranges from very good to I absolutely hate it.
That's interesting.
I
remember off mic, like when we were talking about recording this episode, I told you that I was never really a fan of the music, and that's still true. But it's like an interesting thing where it's like I like the music, and listening to it in this movie, it's every time I watch it, like I'm reminded, oh, it's like really cool. It's complicated. It does some complicated things that are really impressive and interesting. It's just there's not really any, like there's no music of the night. You know what I mean? Like there's no like memory. There's no like song that I would actually listen to on my own, removed from the film.
Right. There's a couple of songs that get stuck in my head, and those are the ones that I'm like, okay, I guess those are good songs, because but there's a lot of like that sing talking, and a lot of like, let's rhyme the same word with itself. A lot like I'm not a music guy, so I can't appreciate on that level. So to me, as like just a dumb fuck, there's a lot of times where I'm just like, I don't know, you're just talking. It's just talking while the music does something else in the background. Like it felt like the music is like itself isn't in line with the singing sometimes, and I just thought like a lot of choruses are just them like repeating the word beautiful over and over again and shit like that. And I'm just like, I don't know, I could write this. I could write it, Tom. I could write these songs.
Yeah, I bet you could.
Yeah, I couldn't perform them, but like. That's what I mean. Where there's some songs where I'm just like, this is a good song, but there's others where I just felt like, you phoned it in. You phoned it in for this one.
Yeah, I don't get that. There's some of the songs are kind of hard to follow because a lot of the cleverness of the songs is they'll do. I don't know enough musical theory to get the
duet
terms
thing,
right.
Where one of them singing one thing, one of them
singing a different harmony, even like a different and it's at a different they'll be like dueling layered vocals, and they're not going necessarily, they're doing something that is kind of an odd rhythm.
They're giving the captions AI a panic attack, is what they're doing. You can't have exposition in your songs that way because it's like, I'm sorry, I can't hear either of you.
Like, I can't follow this.
Yeah.
But it's really, I mean, obviously it's Stephen Sondheim, but I do appreciate, respect, and enjoy the music while I'm watching the movie. There's just this isn't a musical where I like love the music. It's not like Les Miserables. Right. Like Les Miserables, I can sit and just fucking listen to that shit.
A lot of it is just
get all weepy and boo-hooey in my bed, Dave.
Right.
But
this is not that. A lot of this is just, it's not my thing. Yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to, which is like, there's some good craftsmanship here, but I don't find the story particularly, I find the idea compelling, but the actual plot that happens, I didn't find that compelling. The music, there's like some parts that I like, but I just wish there was more nuance. Like I said, like, the judge, if he was actually good to his daughter, like I don't know why I think that's a good idea, other than that gives nuance, like that does something interesting. But everybody is exactly the way you expect them to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody is just as bad or good as they present themselves as, and so
Mrs. Lovett's the only enigma, really. But she becomes very clear by the end of the movie.
Right, but even her first song is, I'm feeding people cats and pies, and I run a shitty pie shop, and I'm like weird, and like she instantly like gloms onto him in a creepy way, where it's like, like I don't know about you, but like she seemed like a villain the moment I saw her too, because it's just, she doesn't, they do it very quickly when she finds Borat's body. She's just like, oh, okay.
Right,
like when she realizes that why he killed him.
It's a great line.
It's a funny bit.
It's like, oh, you did killing somebody. He says, you've gone, what she said, you've gone barking mad, killing somebody who hasn't done you any harm. It's like, well, he recognized me and tried to blackmail me. Oh, well, then that's another thing then.
Yeah. Bonham Carter really fucking kills
so great
it.
in this. She's like clearly the standout in the movie.
She really is.
So it's a bummer that Johnny Depp got all the award attention.
Right. It's wild because the person aside, I actually don't think this is a very interesting role.
I remember even
all
at
he
the
does
time
is sneer and brood, and I'm
growl.
like, this isn't. Yeah.
Like I remember at the time when this came out, and he got his nomination. I was it was before a lot of the really bad stuff about him had come out. I just knew that he was an alcoholic. So I was still a big Johnny Depp fan. And even at that time, I thought his nomination for this movie was weird.
Right. Because it's just like the character, again, not much happens.
It's not he's not bad, but it's like, it's not really a mind-blowing performance or anything.
Right. Which is why I go back to why this feels like a Tim Burton parody. Because it's like Johnny Depp with fucked up hair. Slitting throats, and it's like, this just feels like it just, and then Helena Bonham Carter's there with fucked up hair. It feels so like baseline Tim Burton, and especially the character of Sweeney Todd. Like Helena Bonham Carter is, as you said, the most complex a character gets. And she definitely gets the meatiest role. And so, yeah, it is wild to me that people would recognize Johnny Depp for this performance. And again, it has nothing to do with his performance. Just the character is just me.
Yeah. And his...
I want to kill people.
Yeah. And his performance is good, but it's not like particularly impressive or
right.
mind-blowing, like we said.
Yeah, again, and Alan Rickman is the judge. Like, again, he does a great job, but he's just plays villain. I am villain man.
It's pretty standard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there was one scene that I was like...
I don't want to say it's not particularly impressive. That sounds a little too harsh, more harsh than I mean. It's not a standout performance.
Right, there's a scene where he sentences a kid to be hung by the neck, and it's supposed to be like cartoonishly evil.
Cruel, yeah.
And that's the thing where, like, so the most compelling scene with him to me was when he first takes in what's his fuck, and he's talking to him, and I love the conversation is like, did you not think I heard you singing about stealing my ward in the alleyway? Get the fuck out of here.
At her, you sir. Yes, you gandered at her.
You're belting it out.
Yeah.
But what I thought at first was that, because I had forgotten the movie, that he was going to be on Alan Rickman's good side. Like Alan Rickman wasn't, like, I thought there was going to be a point where like they're tricking him. Mm-hmm. And the way he was acting towards him at first, before he reveals that, was interesting. Because he seems like kind of a sharp man in that scene. He's good at conversation. And I was like, I kind of want to see that.
And he's kind of
side.
It's like a spider. Like he's laying a trap and then springs once he's got Anthony's guard down, and it starts to just become weird and sinister.
Right. And so I think that was more interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So it's things like that, whereas like and then he just kind of becomes an evil buffoon.
Right. The character thereafter is like a fool.
Yeah.
It's just he's just led around from scene to scene. It's like, oh, go send, like, all it takes for Johnny Depp to exact his revenge is he gives their little boy worker, Toby, a letter to Judge Turpin. It's like, oh, Joanna escaped and we're hiding her out in my shop. You should come immediately. That's all it takes.
Right. And then he's like, how about a shave?
How about a shave in the middle of the night when I sent you an urgent letter about your ward / fiance?
Right, and there's this few characters like that. Like, there's little things where, again, I know it's heightened reality, but it doesn't work in its favor. Like, I kept thinking, like, why isn't anybody noticing that everybody who goes into this barber shop simply doesn't come out?
Yeah.
That's weird. And then, like, yeah, there's multiple characters who are like, I'm here to do an inspection. And he's like, but how about a shave? And he's like, yeah, I could go for that.
Yeah, all right, let's go upstairs and get a shave.
Yeah, everybody has to be really, really, really simple and dumb. And so, like, that first scene with Alan Rickman, it's like sediment in a glass that settles into this very two-dimensional character, where it was, like, very exciting at first, and then the movie just sort of settles into everybody being very basic.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It made it hard for me. Ultimately.
And how did he keep building a reputation around town if he was carving it? Like,
who's word of mouth?
They do show that he doesn't kill everyone because he doesn't kill a guy who's there with his wife and kid. But like, if he only spares the people who come with witnesses, then he's still killing like 80% of his clientele. I
had falsely remembered that
I don't
they
bring
show
witnesses to the barber shop.
Right. I falsely remembered that he did spare more people, but in we see him spare exactly one person, and it's just a guy with his family, because I thought that was part of the scheme. It's like, don't kill everybody, just kill some. But no, he's just fucking killing everybody.
At least what they show us in the montage. Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's just again, it's supposed to be heightened reality. It's kind of just a cartoon, ultimately.
Yeah. It really is just blood and guts. Like that's the hook of the movie is this macabre pairing between this a pie maker and the demon barber.
Right.
So that's the appeal of this movie, is that it's a musical about a serial killer who makes meat pies out of his victims.
Yeah. I just wish there was something, because it's simple, like a parable, like a fable, where it's like a heightened reality, but fables and parables have clear messages too. And this didn't feel like it.
I think the message is clear. It's just not. It's just very basic, and it's not particularly original. It's just they sort of from the beginning. Anthony and Sweeney Todd are sailing into London, and we hear that Anthony pulled him out of the ocean. So it begins with Anthony is going the path of saving people or uplifting people, and whereas Sweeney Todd's approach is destroying the things that wronged him. And so we see them continue to go their separate ways throughout the movie until, obviously Sweeney Todd's path of just destroying everything in his path to get what he thinks is justice ends up ruining things that he cared about. Whereas if he had just stuck with what Anthony was doing, they would have busted his daughter out and he would probably be living happy.
Right. But that's
it is stone cold basic, but it is I do think it's clear. It's just not clear. It's just very very basic.
Yeah, you're right. It's basically bad things are bad and good things are good.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you act bad things happen, and if you act good, the problem is it's wrapped in a package that only adults can see. Because it's very R.
It is an extremely childish theme. It's like the theme of every superhero movie is like, learning how to control your power. It's like, all right,
I get it.
That's not like as universal as you seem to think it is,
right?
But
it's I don't know. It doesn't need to be. I don't think. I think that aspect of it is probably. They knew it. They were. I think they set out to make a gothic horror musical.
Yeah.
I think on stage that's probably more impressive than in a movie
because it's more. I think it's more of an outlier in musical theater. There's lots of movies with storylines, and blood and guts like this. There's not as many big musicals like this.
Right.
I do think I get tired of the revenge theme. This movie's theme specifically too. Because it's so childish, and like the superhero example I gave, it's just there as an excuse to do the thing that we're supposed to be shaking our finger at.
Right.
Like it's the only reason this movie has a theme of revenge is bad is so we can spend 2 hours watching this guy take violent, bloody revenge on people. That's It's unless you're doing something that really is subversive, like Old Boy, where you get to the like this movie is tragic, but you still he still should have stabbed the fuck out of Judge Turpin. Fuck that guy.
Right. I guess that's why I was saying what if they made him more of a dimensional character? What if he was nicer to Joanna? Because it's of course, there's no question about killing Alan Rickman. He's bad.
He's a fucking
through.
Ghoul, and he's about to force her to marry him.
Right. You don't even need to want revenge.
No.
You can just look at him and go, that man needs to be shot in the street.
Right. If you took if you just randomly polled a group of people and it's like, hey, should you shoot this Ghoul for all the stuff that we see him do? 80 to 90% of them would be like, yeah, shoot that guy.
Right. So it would have been cool to do a version where no one around Sweeney Todd or no one around the judge's family sees why he would want to get revenge against him. I think that would have been interesting where it's in order to get revenge, he has to be an overt monster to Joanna, which they do kind of make him end up being, but for different reasons, I just think there's this story itself could have been nuanced in a way that I think would have made it more interesting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree, yeah. All right,
but,
I don't think I have anything else left to say about it.
My one other note is, God, I've said this before, being in the past sucked.
Yeah.
They have a shave off in the street and people are like, yes,
and
this is the best thing that's happened this month.
It draws a crowd.
Yeah. Watching a shave off sucks.
Yeah, fucking old-timey London sucks ass.
Yeah.
The olden
really
days
sucks.
are bullshit.
Really is. Where they're like, that shaving cream is the nicest thing I've smelled in my entire life. Yeah.
Like fucking Timothy Spall says he's using what is it?
Ambergris?
Ambergris as a cologne, and that's like fucking whale puke.
Yeah, but it is a common cologne, I believe.
Yeah, they did used to make perfume out of it, but like they used to make whale perfume out of fucking whale vomit.
Right, exactly. It's all, it just sucks back then.
It's just
Sucks.
garbage. It's trash, Dave.
In a way, Sweeney Todd's a hero because he's taking them all out of this world.
He's giving them a sweet release from living in this hellish world. Like, if I was alive in this time, I would bury myself and wait for the future.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I would entomb myself like Dracula.
Yep.
And wait for 1993.
Even if the world exploded, that's better than this. My entire body itches. Everything itches and smells terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck this place.
It's garbage.
Yeah.
You can just buy a child from the workhouse.
Yeah.
That's how Sacha Baron Cohen gets Toby.
Yeah, he just gets
bought him
kid.
from the workhouse.
Yep. Not a great time.
The hell are we doing?
Right. That sucks for that kid. Imagine getting Borat to buy you and he's no fun. He's no fun.
Yeah, and then you think you have Quasi-Mom and Helena Bonham Carter, and then that falls through. Then you have to cut a man's throat, and now what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do? I don't know.
I do like that ending where he's like cradling his dead wife or whatever and doing the reprise of one of the songs, and the Toby the kid crawls out of the grate and walks up behind him. I remember seeing this for the first time and seeing the look on that kid's face and being like, oh yeah, that kid's putting you on ice, man. You're not
that kid I enjoyed that kid's like, you know what? I'm gonna end this.
Yeah, fuck this guy.
Yeah. This sucks. This situation
sick of you
sucks.
and your singing and your skunk hair.
Yeah. You need to go.
You killed that nice lady that made me gin
pies
and pies.
And gin,
until she tried to kill me.
Yep.
I sang her a song about how I was going to keep her safe. Man, fuck you, man. Cuts his throat.
I would say that kid's different now, or but I think he's on par with most of the children in his world.
His life has not been easy up to this point.
Right. He's going to talk to other orphans. They're going to be like, did your boss also feed people to other people and make pies? And they're like, yeah, more or less. That's what happened.
He's probably...
Had to slit his throat. I did.
Had to slit his throat. I did. Cut it right open.
Yeah.
Bleeding everywhere. He's not the only orphan he knows that has killed a man.
No, of course not.
This is what the olden days suck.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
This is why.
Yeah.
All right. I got nothing else.
He's got a teardrop tattoo.
Got a few.
Yeah, he's got a couple.
Yeah. Good old Scrappy.
Made
orphan.
some. It's survival of the fittest in the workhouses, man.
Yeah. Again, it sucked. It sucked bad.
Yeah, it was trash.
Yeah.
All right.
Harrison Millie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. This was a fun episode. I enjoyed talking about Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
I'm glad I checked in with it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so Harrison Millie, thank you. They did this through our Patreon. Patreon.com/gamefully unemployed, GAMEFULLY unemployed, along with doing tiers where there's custom We Just Watched episodes. For just $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts on there, such as Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies with our patrons every Friday night.
Yep.
We do all sorts of things on there. There's custom podcasts you can get. We have a Discord with a whole community of very kind people, very kind and sexy people. Mm-hmm. So check that out.
And absolutely none of them are from the olden days.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a store. Head over to gamefullyemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store. We have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your demon barbering peepers onto that.
Yep. We also sell children. But you're going to have to message us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe cut that.